The hospital was never quiet at night, not truly. Even when the hallways looked empty, when the overhead lights flickered in that pale green glow, there was always something breathing in the silence. Machines hummed, vents sighed, and the occasional drip of water echoed from unseen pipes. But inside ward number 13, the noises were different. The staff avoided it when they could. The nurses moved a little faster past its door. Even the doctors lowered their voices when speaking about it. 13 had a reputation, one whispered about in break rooms, half in jest, half in fear. No patient assigned to that ward ever made it through the night, not one. It began years ago with a single patient. A man brought in after a car accident, his body broken but alive. He should have recovered. The doctors were optimistic, yet by morning he was gone, his face frozen in a silent scream. The nurses said they heard him talking through the night, whispering to someone in the corner of his room, though no one was there. Then another patient followed. A young woman admitted for routine surgery. The night she was placed in Ward 13, she began screaming an hour after midnight. By the time staff reached her, her heart had stopped, though the monitors had read perfectly normal until that exact moment. One incident can be explained, two could be coincidence, but after the third, after the fourth, after the 10th, the whispers began. They said Ward 13 was cursed, that something walked the halls inside it, unseen but always present. The hospital administration tried to keep the rumors quiet. They blamed equipment failures, human error, anything to avoid the truth, but the staff knew better. Nurses would swap shifts to avoid going near that place. Security guards refused to patrol the corridor at night. And yet, despite the fear, the ward remained open. Beds filled and patients continued to be placed there. Patients who never walked out again. On one particular night, the corridors seemed quieter than usual. A storm raged outside, wind rattling the windows, rain striking the glass in furious waves. Lightning flashed, throwing stark shadows across the empty halls. At exactly 11:47 p.m., the power flickered. The lights dimmed to black for a fraction of a second, then returned with a dull hum. That was the moment when the atmosphere shifted. Inside Ward 13, 4 patients lay in their beds, all of them alert enough to notice the sudden chill in the air. One of them, a woman named Claire, whispered to the nurse making her rounds. "Do you see it?" she asked, her voice trembling. The nurse frowned, following her gaze toward the far corner of the room. Nothing was there, only the faint shimmer of shadow cast by a flickering light. "See what?" the nurse asked, but Claire only shook her head, eyes wide, refusing to answer. At 12:03 a.m., the first scream echoed down the hall. Staff rushed to the ward, but the monitors showed nothing unusual. Heart rate steady, oxygen normal. Yet the patients' faces were pale, their eyes darting around the room, following movements only they could see. The staff tried to calm them, but the panic spread like wildfire. All 4 patients began crying, pleading to be moved. "Please," one begged, "don't leave us here tonight." By 12:30, the storm outside reached its peak. Thunder shook the building, and the lights in Ward 13 flickered again. This time, the machines faltered. Monitors went blank, screens sputtering with static before returning. In that short blackout, every patient swore they saw a figure standing at the foot of their beds. Tall, thin, with hollow eyes glowing faintly white in the darkness. The staff wrote it off as hysteria, as fear feeding fear. But the ward itself felt alive. The walls seemed to breathe, shadows stretched longer than they should. Even the air smelled different, like damp soil, like something decaying. At 1:06 a.m., the first patient flatlined. A man in his 60s recovering from pneumonia. His body twisted in the bed, as though invisible hands had wrenched him backward. The monitor screamed, staff rushed in, CPR was attempted, but his neck bore strange marks. Thin, long, almost like fingers pressing deep into the skin. The others began to panic uncontrollably. The youngest patient, a teenager with a broken leg, sobbed and clutched his blanket. He said a voice whispered his name over and over from the darkness under his bed. When the nurse crouched to look, she saw nothing but shadow. Yet the boy screamed so loud it felt like the walls shook with him. By 1:30, the staff debated moving them. But moving patients mid-storm in a ward without power backup posed risks. The supervisor decided to wait. That decision sealed their fate. One by one, the patients began to fade. Not naturally, not with the gradual decline the staff knew well. No. This was violent, sudden, as though something unseen drained the life from them all at once. The teenager's monitor spiked, then flatlined as he arched violently, eyes wide with terror, staring at something the staff couldn't see. Claire clawed at her own skin, begging someone to pull it away. Her hands left bloody streaks across her arms before she collapsed, silent. The staff couldn't explain it. No amount of medical intervention worked. Every injection, every shock, every breath of oxygen, it was all useless. And then, finally, silence fell. The last patient's chest rose one final time, and then stopped. Ward 13 lay quiet, still except for the storm outside. But silence didn't last, because the staff began to hear footsteps. Slow, deliberate, pacing along the length of the ward, yet no one was moving. No one alive, at least. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped just outside the door. The handle rattled. Every head turned. The lights flickered again, plunging the ward into a brief darkness. When they came back on, the bodies of the 4 patients were no longer lying peacefully. Each one was sitting upright, eyes open, staring directly at the staff. That was when the screams began again, this time from the living. By morning, Ward 13 was empty. No patients. No staff, only the faint echo of something scratching against the walls. When security entered hours later, the ward was pristine. Beds made, machines silent, and on each pillow, a faint handprint, pressed deep into the fabric, darker than shadow. The hospital tried to cover it up. They called it a tragic malfunction, blamed the storm, filed reports that said nothing about what the witnesses swore they saw. But those who were there, those who survived the night, never spoke of it again. They quit their jobs, moved away, some even disappeared altogether. And yet, Ward 13 still stands, still waiting, still hungry. By the way, if stories like this send chills down your spine, you may want to subscribe to Backdoor Tales, because darker ones are still waiting. Some say late at night, when the corridors are empty and the storm rattles the glass, you can still hear the machines in Ward 13 beeping. You can still hear the shuffle of unseen feet. And sometimes, if you listen closely, you'll hear the whisper of your own name, spoken by a voice that doesn't belong to anyone you can see. Would you survive a night in Ward 13? And if you want more tales like this one, don't forget to subscribe to Backdoor Tales, because the next story might be even closer to home.